Today I have the pleasure of speaking with Mark Tory from Defense Metals. Mark, how are you today?
I'm extremely well, thanks, Tracy. Good to see you, and hopefully you're well as well.
You know, I have lost count over how many people have sent me the Sprott ETF in the last, I don't know, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. And then I saw a news release about you this week. You've been added to this ETF. So how about we start there with congratulations and tell us how you were selected and give us a bit of an update on that.
Oh, thanks, Tracy. Look, to be honest, don't know how we're selected. We just saw ourselves on the list and thought we better get out there and let people know that we were, because obviously for us to be there is fantastic, and I think it certainly validates what we're doing here at Defense Metals.
Well, speaking of that, we were also discussing an analyst who was doing a piece actually about how a lot of people are just throwing rare earths into their basket with really no knowledge or understanding of what rare earths are. But you're an actual legitimate veteran of the rare earth industry running Defense Metals. So can you give investors out there some advice on how to select companies that actually do have rare earths?
Yeah, there's probably a couple of things to look at, Tracy. And, one of the things I've said for a number of years is the important thing for investors when they're looking at projects in rare earths is don't have a look at what the grade is in the ground necessarily. You've got to have a look at what it beneficiates up to in that first initial phase to a concentrate. And if that grade can be, above 30% grade, say, this is in Mark Tory speak, it's got a chance of being economic. And there's a lot of projects out there that might have some relatively good grades in the ground, but just because Mother Nature hasn't blessed them with the right rocks or the right mineralogy, they're just not able to concentrate up into a grade to make it economic. And the reason behind that is the major costs associated with rare earth processing is in the hydromet stage. So the higher the concentrate grade you can get to feed that hydromet, the smaller the hydromet needs to be for the same output, which obviously means you save capex costs, opex costs, etc. And the other thing to understand also with rare earths and the hydromet stage is the fact that it needs to be large for economies of scale. So you can't have a whole lot of small hydromet plants globally around the world. You're going to have a number of hubs that are happening that are going to be producing, 4 to 5,000 tons plus per annum of oxides.
In your most recent interview with internationally renowned critical mineral expert Jack Lipton, he described you as the resource expert building North America's rare earth breakout project. Can you tell us what he meant and what competitive elements were getting Jack so excited about defense metals?
As I've just previously gone through, one of the things that I look at when I look at rare earth projects globally is, that concentrate grade and what we can get to in that concentrate grade. And it's what attracted me to move from Perth to Vancouver was the fact that Wichita goes from its 2.4% TREO grade in the ground to a 50% concentrate grade. And what that does is that puts us in the same leagues as your Lynases and your MP materials in the world. And so when we're able to complete our pre-feasibility study last year, when we talk about volumes and the economics around that PFS, it's in the same sort of leagues that we're talking about for Lynases and MP materials, and the hydromet plant that we talk about, is at that scale that I talked about as well for the economies of scale.
So, based in British Columbia, can you talk to us about some of the advantages of your location?
Oh, as I said, Mother Nature not only blessed us with the mineralization and rocks that we have up there, but also blessed us with the location. So we're only 80 kilometres from Prince George, which is a mining town, has existing infrastructure around it, and mining services. We're close to road, rail. We've got BC Hydro in relation to hydroelectric power. So yeah, we've just been really blessed. We've got access directly to Port Rupert by rail. It's just in a perfect location.
And of course, you most recently announced that you received up to 1.88 million in funding for your clean energy and transportation infrastructure project. Can you explain some of the details and how you actually secured this?
Yeah, so this is part of the federal government's, well, they've renamed the CMIF fund, the Critical Minerals Infrastructure Fund, the First Mile, Last Mile Fund. So we're able, this is our second lot of funding that we've got from them. And it revolves around us, obviously doing some studies around, around the infrastructure needed for our project up there at near Prince George.
So you finished your pre-feasibility study last year. What should we be looking forward to now? What's the next big milestone you're looking to achieve for the defense metal shareholders?
Look, we're currently going down a number of paths in relation, especially in relation to strategic investors, and that's the one thing that we're certainly, looking to do something around over the next, 6 to 12 months. And when I talk about strategic investors, I talk about it under a number of different arms. So we talk about the technical side. So we want to see if we can attract a strategic investor to help us, in relation to the separation side of the rare earth processing. We're also looking at potential off-takers. So that's another one, and the off-takers can potentially come along with financing as well. And then we're obviously looking at other potential strategic partners on the financing side. And that financing side is also two-part. We talk about the private and then we talk about the government. So we're working on a whole lot of different tentacles that are out there and a whole lot of different companies and governments in relation to us, getting or a few strategic partners on board.
And of course, I'm going to go back to this question again because there's a lot of people out there, they're seeing the word rare earths everywhere. Okay. Very new to it. They want to get in on it. What is the most compelling reason why they need to put defense metals and separate you from the rest of the pack?
Again, it goes back to our ability to concentrate up to that 50% concentrate grade. We're one of the few, we're the only company in North America outside of MP Materials to have a reserve, which just demonstrates, how far down the track that we are in relation to this. We are just about to start our full feasibility study on Wichita. So, we're definitely one of the most advanced and one of the largest. Because when we talk about our PFS and the output from our PFS, we're talking around 7 to 8% of global production. So we're talking, 5,000 tons of NdPr, which is significant and which will help go into that supply gap that we're seeing from, your Adamuses and your benchmarks and your Arguses in sort of the 2030 onwards.
What have you found yourself talking about most recently with defense metals that you've really enjoyed or is very different from 1 year ago?
Oh, that's a good question. As you know, I just enjoy talking about the rare earth industry as a whole. But with defense, look, I think we're getting a lot more traction out there now. We're getting people understanding, what Wichita's about and the quality of the project itself. And I'm finding that I'm getting a lot more traction in governments, across the globe, as well as with his potential investors and potential strategic investors. So, that's been great to see. It's been easier making phone calls.
Well, in addition, of course, to making phone calls, you're going to be a speaker at the upcoming CMI Summit 5 in Toronto. What do you plan on talking about to that audience?
We're going to have a chat about that. So there's a couple of different topics we could potentially have a look at, but one of the ones I thought might be interesting to people there is the the need to make sure that you're going through the permitting process correctly and the impacts of that permitting process on projects and financeability. So, you know, going around in my head at the moment is something around that and what we've been doing in relation to that and the importance of community in the process.
One final note, capital. Do you see more capital looking at the rare earth sector this year, or is it still hot air?
I think it's still probably more hot air than actual capital. Um, and when you talk about capital, you talk about from the government side as well as the private side. Um, I think it's a lot easier now than it was this time last year. I'll be honest with you. Um, but I think we can still see a bit more come into the sector.
Well, with over 30 years of professional experience in the rare earth sector, what are you focused on in this upcoming quarter for your shareholders?
Um, as I mentioned, we're certainly looking at continuing discussions with potential strategic partners. We're going through our proposal for the feasibility study that we talked about as well. So should be an announcement around that. We're looking to begin our 30-ton pilot plant at SGS towards the end of this month, early next month. So that will go right through the beneficiation hydromet process. So yeah, it's got a fair bit happening at the moment.
So, for those of you interested in finding out more and staying on top of what's happening at Defense Metals, please go to the following website. Mark, thank you so much for the update today.
Thank you very much, Tracy.